Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Do not know why I'm sharing my screen with you, but either way, we're excited to have you along here today for the ride. Inside the Game, number 14 is officially underway here on the National Soccer Network. My name is Jonathan Turner, alongside Mr. Nathan Wangler, and Mr. Peter has officially won his
T-shirt.
But we did have a thing we added in yesterday. We did have this thing we added in yesterday. It has to be on the last moment of the show today, right before we end. Got to get a comment in that hits our screen. If he does, then he wins. I'm just kidding. He's going to win it.
You're mixing up so now you're changing up the expectations for him. So what's up, Jimmy? Yeah, Jimmy's well on his way too. He's been back every single morning for.
Well, he keeps it going if he can go 15 straight episodes, then he'll get one too, because it's 14 for Peter, and I think he's got to beat Peter's 15. So I just feel like that should be the thing. But officially,
the expectation goes up with every passing T-shirt we give out. So after this, it'll be like you have to listen for like 3 weeks, and then 3 months, and then soon enough it'll be half a year, and then it'll be a year. You'll have to listen to a year straight of Inside.
I don't think you understand how high quality our merch is. Okay, it is high quality. It is the highest of quality of merch that you can get. I would put it up there against any Essentials hoodie. I would not do that, actually.
Doesn't shrink. It's cozy.
Probably does shrink.
Everything. No shrinking. Everything you're looking for.
So what are we going to talk about today here, Mr. Wangler? I was talking about this before. Tonight I got a basketball game, and that I'm doing for ESPN Plus. Oak University, Robert Morris University, the Colonials, women's basketball. And I figured what we could do today is we talk a lot about what it is that we do, but I think it's kind of cool for us because, again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I have a game here in 10 hours, whatever it is. And I'm knee deep in prep right now. And if I wasn't on this show, I would be watching more ESPN Plus film on these two teams. I would be continuing on my spotting board, all that stuff. So I, as part of my commitment to this network and this show, have taken the time to do this show, and I'm stepping away from prep. So I figured it'd be kind of cool for us to talk about what goes into our prep work and to do so today in a little bit more detail. So that's going to be the topic of our show. Now, granted, we do this for all sports. So, and obviously some sports, there's a varying degree, of prep that we may or may not do, depending upon the league, the level, whatever the case might be. But I've also think it's important too, that while we're on this platform, we just need to talk about what is exciting things that are happening here on the platform. And I want to make an announcement. Okay, we're going to announce it right now here on the National Soccer Network, Inside the Game. We have a contract that we finalized with a league. Here about a month ago. It is one of the largest leagues in the country in women's soccer, in amateur soccer. We have secured the exclusive rights to produce and deliver all 640 games of the Women's Premier Soccer League on our platform. And I'm making that announcement right now. So if you are a lover of soccer and a lover of women's soccer, which should be everybody, by the way, we will be your home for Women's Premier Soccer League across 36 states around the country. I will be heading to Oklahoma City tomorrow morning at 7:30 in the morning, and to head to Oklahoma. And there's no direct flights, by the way, which is myself. That's annoying in its own right, by the way. You can't just go there. You have to go somewhere else, then go there. That just annoys me. But going to Oklahoma City tomorrow, where we are going to meet with all the teams, the AGM meeting tomorrow and Saturday, and talk about how this is all going to be delivered. But I'm super excited. Also, another announcement, we have secured the rights to not one, not two, not three, but 4 youth tournaments here in Michigan starting in April. We're talking 500 plus games, 300 teams, and every single one of those tournament games will be streamed live on our platform by us with commentary. So that's like 1,100 games right there. And that's not counting all the other announcements that we are about to make, which I'll make one more. It's like, holy crap, John, what else you got? We have also secured the rights to the League of Clubs, a brand new men's league based here in the United States that just was created here over the last 6 months. We will be streaming all of their league games as well, nationwide, by the way. And that is another 200 plus games right there. So you take the MASL, you take the League of Clubs, take the WPSL, take all that. And by the way, we have like 7 more down the pipeline that we'll be announcing over the next couple weeks. So I'm whispering because they're not out there yet, but we are going to have close to 4,000 games on our platform. But speaking of that, Peter, I've got a gentleman who lives in Chicago who would love to be a local camera operator in Chicago, and I'm going to hook him up with you, and obviously have you hooked up with us, and we'll make everybody copacetic there in the Illinois, Chicagoland area. So, all right, my announcements that's it for the announcements today. But my goodness, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of games. It's going to be scary as shit. But that's why when we're hiring so many people, it's the reason why. But so, Nathan, man, how are you doing? I just said a lot there. You didn't say anything. So
Really? No, yeah, and I agree. I think it's cool what, obviously what we're trying to accomplish and taking that stride to a national brand. I always thought it was interesting whenever we were covering games around different parts of the country. Specifically, obviously, I remember going down to Columbus and doing the UPSL game with you down there for the Columbus Crews developmental side. And it's always interesting. We used to say Michigan Soccer Network anywhere we went, even if it was, across the country or wherever else we went. And I always found that interesting because I'm like, yeah, we're Michigan based, but we're going to all these different places and calling everywhere from professional down to youth games across the USA. And we're using Michigan every single time we do it. Now, ever since transitioning, the expectation is that we're going to be doing this not just in the state of Michigan and not just in this local area, this is where we're mainly consumed, but across the country too. So to see that, that expansion and that outreach is massive. And again, part of the show is to kind of give you guys an understanding of what this company is and what we're looking for and what we want to accomplish. Not only that, the kind of people that we want in the company at the end of the day. So I think for us to take a step up and a step forward in terms of that many games, not only is going to help us expand, but again, kind of execute on that line that we kept referring back to the other day, which is shining a light on the game. And obviously we've done that in both ways, good ways and bad ways, but here's one good way. We're going to be able to bring you high quality broadcast coverage for all of these leagues from where we are and from the resources that we have to our disposal. So I'm personally, as a talent, I'm personally very, very excited. I was just listening. I thought you had a lot of good news.
And we'll make these things all official here over the coming days on our platform, thenationalsoccernetwork.com. We can get all your soccer news, both national and local, here around the country. Dan Stickrad hard at work writing all the stories that you could possibly ever want to read. I would say listen to, but they're not audio only or anything, so you can't listen to them, but you can definitely read them. And check those out at nationalsoccernetwork.com. It's going to become the leading news source for all things soccer in this country, from youth to professional. And we have some announcements coming down the pipeline as well later on in February and in March, where we talk about some of the cool things that we're going to be doing to help assist coaches and referees around this country as well. So a lot of things coming down the pipeline that I'm excited to talk about, man. We are not just a media company streaming games. We are going to be a news place. We're going to be an association of sorts. You name it, we're going to have it. So last night, as part of our relationship with Oakland University, we do what we call a pregame show for them and a post-game show as part of our business with them. And last night, I'm sitting in the room, in the pregame room, getting everything kind of set up and ready to go. A talent hasn't shown up yet, and I'm not going to go into detail about this but um, as the president and founder of this business, from time to time, people are going to come up to me and tell me what's going on in their life, right? And I'm a personal person. I love talking with people. I'll be the first one to tell you that if I have to go on vacation someplace, I hate people. So I say I hate people. Like, yeah, if I want to go on vacation,
I mean, I do
really
in general. It doesn't take a vacation for me, but yes, I
that's fair.
understand.
But I hate, maybe the wrong word to use, but like I hate crowds. So if I'm going on vacation, I want to go sit on the beach and I want no one around me. Like, if I'm going to Disney World, no lines, walk right on in, you're good to go. Like that would be like the perfect like solution situation for me. And because when we go out and you do things, you just kind of want to be on your own. But when you're in life, you just I mean, at least I am. I don't mind having those conversations, especially, you talk about production crews. That's what they do, right? They go and have, they go bullshitting over by the water cooler of sorts, right? And that kind of a thing. And last time I'm sitting in the room and one of our people come up and start talking to me and start kind of giving me their current life story. And I at first it wasn't hitting me in my brain like this is exactly what my wife was telling me would happen to her when she was a general manager of a restaurant. People would just come on in and just start sharing stuff. And not that she didn't want to like be there to help people, but she's just like, if they share this stuff with me, that personal connection between me and them, it hurts me from being really able to, if I have to make tough business decisions, be able to do that. Because now there's like this, it's almost like if you think about the Herb Brooks and his assistant coach, and I'm going to draw a blank on his assistant coach, the one that would actually blow the whistle, but the one that was the friends of the players, right? There has to be like, you have to have like that other person, like that other manager who can be that quote unquote like friend or someone that can be more personable with somebody in these positions, because it's not saying that I don't want to have like that personal relationship with somebody, but in order for me to be effective in my role in this, can I still be able to effectively do that if I have a bunch of personal relationships with people or know some of these stories? Because if you, based on the story this person told me, they're going through a really shitty time right now. And if I had to make a decision about this person's employment, whatever it might be, would I start to say, okay, well, they're going through that. That's an excuse. Should I not do it? Right. I mean, and that, not saying that those things should not be part of an equation, but I kind of feel like they have to be, I mean, that could be a reason as to why someone's maybe underperforming and things like that. But, so I don't want it to come off like I'm this person who doesn't want to be personal with people. I don't want it to be that way, but it's got to find that balance. And I know this show's called Inside the Game. But to be fair, this is exactly what we talk about, because if we're talking about inside the game, inside the broadcast, inside any environment, whether that be a professional environment and an amateur environment, it doesn't matter, Nathan. The reality is you deal with these things and they can have an impact on how you do business. I mean, this person I know for a fact has gone off and told this story to a number of people within our group. So they know and are aware of this situation. So, and that's going to happen in our world, but it's just, I'm fearful that kind of personal connection could, in fact, down the pipeline, down the way, could be an issue. So I just want to put that out there. I don't, I'm just curious your thoughts.
No, I think personal connections and I think personal relationships are good. And honestly, if I don't have a personal connection or a relationship, at least on some level, with the people that I'm working for, specifically the one that is in charge of me, my boss, it's going to be really tough for me to want to work in that place. And I understand.
You your boss, though?
What's that?
Do you consider me your boss?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah. So, I mean, in one way or the other, if you want to talk about the logistical chain, it technically is someone technically my boss? Sure. But in a lot of ways you are, because you were the one that brought me on and you're the, director of broadcasting and all that other stuff. So I think it's important to have a good relationship with your boss, but there also should be expectations at the same exact time. I think it's a balance of both. You have to be able to connect with people, I think, on a personal level in your company. And again, I've never owned a business. I've never ran a business. This is just me personally. This is just my personal opinion from where I come from as a talent and as a worker and as someone that is hired to do a job. You have to have some level of a personal relationship. Now, does that mean enabling somebody or making excuses for somebody? No, because there are expectations. And so you can still kill them kindly if you have to. But in order for someone to feel like they are safe working for you and they want to work for you and they want to come back working for you, there has to be that level of understanding in a baseline relationship. But I do appreciate the fact, and I'll say this, I appreciate the fact that you come from the position of the reason why he may be struggling or not on time or doing these other things is because he's going through that struggle. There's a lot of bosses out there who would just automatically assume it and attribute it to just laziness. Oh, you just weren't here on time. Well, no, there's a little bit more in the way of context that goes into that. And that's a uniquely American thing. If someone's late or if someone doesn't get something done, we're automatically going to attribute that to malice as opposed to it happened because of this reason or that reason. So like we talked about yesterday with the whole expectations, like it's good to have expectations, but I also think it's important to have that personal relationship. So I think it's a mix of both. And obviously you can't, allow people to just get away with whatever they want to get away with, because then you're a pushover. And when you talk about hiring all these different people, and especially running a business that's growing, you cannot be a pushover. That's not something you can be. But at least I'm just going to say this. The best bosses I've ever worked for, I've had some sort of a personal relationship with, whether that be you, whether that be, the GM and obviously Dan, over at the West Michigan Whitecaps, whether that be any of the other places that I've worked, the worst places that I've worked, there really wasn't a personal relationship at all. And it was just what I need to do and micromanaging and, hello, goodbye. I'll see you the next time I work. And that never really felt like a home to me. Ever felt like a home to me. It felt like a place to work.
I get that. And obviously the one thing I don't want, and we talk about this, we want this to be a part of a family. And obviously there's a good and there's a bad that comes with being part of a family. And while we are a business, I want people to be able to come to me, and to anyone for that matter, in a position of authority and feel comfortable enough to be able to share with them what's going on. It's just, what I'm going to sense, and I think this is probably true in any position, because I can think of it myself too, is that, I think people generally feel this, this sense of sharing, maybe that you know what I mean? Like there's like this, like they sometimes almost feel like the need to maybe share something that maybe they shouldn't necessarily share. And again, I don't want to come off like I'm complaining, because I'm not. And this person is specifically is a really cool person, and we, and the fact that they shared this with me, and obviously, I thought I'd just talk about it for a second, because it's the inner workings of a business, right? And these are things that are going to come up from time to time, and whatnot. It's about 9:15. 9:19. Wow, geez, I was off by a few minutes. We want to get into what we're going to talk about here today. But first and foremost, first time stopping by, hit that subscribe button, like us, share this with your friends and family. Remember, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Check us out there. This episode, along with all the other episodes, are currently available. Well, this episode is not currently available, but all the other ones are currently available on all of our listing platforms. But I do have a question back to those of you who are tuning in this morning. Curious your thoughts. Do you feel comfortable enough sharing with your, superior, your boss, what's going on in your personal life? And is there a reason? Obviously, I'm always curious as to why, right? I know why I would share. I would share information not because I wanted it to be an excuse as to why I was underperforming, But I felt it was necessary to sometimes let my boss or the people that were in a role of authority in places that I worked at to kind of have an understanding of what it might, hey, this might impact my ability to be here one day. And I wanted you to know, like, hey, if your wife got pregnant, you're going to go up and tell your boss, hey, my wife's pregnant and I might have to go to appointments, congratulations, oh my God. And then there's this whole thing. But, you don't want to not tell them, and then one day your wife's get into labor and now you haven't told them, right? You haven't informed your employer that there's this thing that's about to happen. So I'm just curious your thoughts. You're tuning in right now, you're watching. I'm curious your thoughts on, do you feel comfortable sharing that information? And then number two, is there a why? What's your why? As we dive into this morning. So Nathan, we talked about a little bit, kind of like I showed my spotting boards in the past. Matter of fact, accidentally I shared it on the screen this morning. So if you're just joining us, you saw that. Tonight I've got this basketball game at Oak University, women's basketball, Robert Morris Colonials taking on Oak University and the Golden Grizzlies. Okay. And part of my prep, I go through a number of stages in prep. The first one is player recognition, identifying players. And that process for me is to go on each of their respective websites and to pull player information and put it into my spotting board. Now, I am working on a system where I could basically run an API protocol or some kind of an AI system that would pull this information into the board for me, because that would make my life way easier in all aspects of what I do. Once I do that, then I focus on a lot of the team stuff, right? So their overall standings, where they, their records, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to put this back up on the screen because I think it's important that I do that. So here it is, and I gotta find the actual. So this is what I use for my. Well, we've shown this before, so this isn't like a new thing that we haven't shown before. But again, I start off with a player. Their information, where they're located, where they grew up, what their current class is. So Maya Murray is a graduate. She's number 0. She's a forward, 6'3", and we quantify that as a big in our world, right? When there is a player in the basketball realm that is above 6 foot, we call them a big. And in men's basketball, it's probably more like 6'4", 6'5", depending upon, and I don't know if there's actually a defining it's 6'2" and above. But, typically your men's basketball team, most of your players are maybe over 6 foot. So it starts with, okay, who's in the upper echelon of that 6 foot? Is 6'9", 6'10", things like that. So I get in. So this one forward, 6'3", quantifier is big. Uniontown, Pennsylvania. She's a transfer from Brown. Okay. So I have that right there in that information. And I do that for every single player. Now, when there is a player that has a phonetic name that is hard to pronounce or hard to say, it is our job to figure out how to say their name correctly. So that is something that I have to do. So Murray, not hard to say, right? Maya either. Now Reza Sabwa is someone I have to pronounce properly. So as part of that, I get a pronunciation guide from the university in most cases. And then I'll look at those phonetics, and then I'll listen to other broadcasters say their name. Now, in a lot of cases, you might not have that, depending on the league that you work, right? You might not have another person calling her name, but I tend to listen to multiple broadcasts when I hear a person's name to see if they're all saying it the same. Because if one person says it's Salwa, right? Another person might say it's Salba, right? There might just be a ba. Now, if you notice in mine, I have Salba, but I know after hearing it, it's Sabwa, right? And I could go the bois and add in some other things there, but I know it's Sabwa. It ends in that bois, right? So I'm not going to add in anything else. I'm cool with that, but everybody's different in how they're going to find the phonetic aspect, right, of saying this. And I used to just do the phonetics only, Nathan. I didn't used to put the player's real name, like the way it's really spelled, and then the pronunciation. I would just do the pronunciation, because that would, a lot of times I would see the name and I would actually kind of in my brain, I would start to reform what I thought the word or the name was going to be, and it would screw me up. But now I do both. And I found a way to balance that. But so that's what I do for each player. I go down this list. And as you notice, there's only a couple players on this list that I have to really worry about in regards to that. This one, Noah, it's Givon. So Givon is the way it's pronounced. She is from Israel, which is pretty cool. But that's really the only one that I would struggle with on this roster. So that's kind of how I set that up. And then from there, I then go with their stats. I start with their games played versus games started, minutes per game average. And someone say, well, why is that important? Well, because to be fair, you can look at the minutes per game and the games played, games started. There might be a ton of players who start like every single game, but their minutes per game are like 12. They might be 10 minutes per game. And you might have a player who plays in 14 games who's averaging 9.8 minutes, right? Or this person has 18.1 games they've played, started in one, but they're averaging 15.6 minutes. This person is a crucial person coming in off the bench, right? Especially when you start thinking about the person who started 13, Vuletic, for example. She's averaging 17.6, and she started in 9 games. And then you look at it and say, well, why is she only played in 13? Because she had an injury. So like that data without knowing. And one thing that I think is important too, Nathan, is that specifically in women's basketball and women's sports and the non-major schools, non-power 5 mid-majors, we don't talk about injuries. Like it's not like the NFL. It's not like you hear like, oh, torn ACL out for 12 weeks. Like they don't discuss that at these levels. Like you don't know in most cases why they're out. The ankle injury from last week. Yeah. We have no idea when she'll be back. There's like it's like HIPAA violations. We can't even ask.
Right. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing where I'm doing games, but there's a way of addressing it without addressing it. And I remember because we had a few different guys on our men's team that ended up going down due to injury. And I was talking to our sports information director, and he's like, don't mention it. Don't say anything about it. And I'm like, well, you don't get it. Like that's a part of the story. We have 3 of our main contributing players that are hurt. They are not going to be on the floor. So we're going to have bench guys in the game here today that no one's ever seen before. And I'm supposed to just act like, oh yeah, he's just playing today. He's just playing 20 minutes just because coach wanted him to. And our 3 main contributors are all sitting on the bench just because. Oh, and by the way, we're playing a top 10 team. Like that doesn't add up to people. And so I get it. Like obviously don't dive into, there's no injury list. I mean, I'm sure there is at the college levels, but it's not like public knowledge. You're not allowed to, just go spouting off about it. But that was something that in a conversation that I had with them, which is like, you still have to say it, right? Because it's still an important thing to mention, but you can say it without necessarily saying it, if that makes any sense. We are out the services of this person or that person, or they won't be on the floor.
You just can't really go into detail about what it is, because in a lot of cases you don't know. I mean, like we know that if, like for example, and because a lot of times there are some moments where a player, you can say, okay, well that player went out yesterday with a knee injury, and now they're out the rest of the season. So there's a lot of reasons as to why someone might not be playing, but I don't tend to get into that at this level. We just say, hey, this person's been out with an injury. So, for example, Vuletic has been out with an injury for a bit. But like Jada Lee, for example, if you scroll down here, she made her first appearance since December 21st against Youngstown State, which they played this past weekend. She was out with an injury for over a month. So that was the last time she played. So it was addressed in her last game, and I will probably address it again in this game, because Jada Lee is, if you notice, she would have been a starter in almost all of those environments. So she's a graduate student. She's 5'6". She's a guard. So she's an important part of their team. So it's good to know those types of things going into this. So that's all the statistical data for each player. And then at the top up here, I've got their overall record. I've got what that percentage is. I've got their conference record. Now, I've got their conference record actually in 2 places, or 3 places in total on this board. We'll talk about that in a second. What their winning percentage is in their conference, what their win streak is. If they've lost 1 or won 1, I'd put it here. They've won 1. They're 4-6 at home. They're 2-6 on the road, and they're 0. They haven't played anything neutral yet. Why is this important? Well, one, they were actually 1-6 on the road going into Youngstown State this past week, and they beat Youngstown State on the road. And while that's important, it may not be important, the whole big picture of things. They've just won a road game for the first time in a long time this season. And now they're coming into doing another road game here tonight in Rochester at Oakland University. So is that a storyline that we should be paying attention to? Yes, it is. Right. So will that mean that they'll have a great success? No, it doesn't. This team was picked 11th to go 11th in the Rise League this season. They were picked to go dead last. They finished dead last year. So, are they going on a bit of a run? Who knows? They beat Youngstown State 67-62, right, this past weekend. Youngstown State is currently 7th in the Horizon League at 3-6, and they're 8-11 overall. So Robert Morris beat a team that is obviously above them right now in the standings, and Robert Morris is currently sitting 9th right now. So they're performing a little bit above what they're supposed to. And there are other teams that are performing below standards, and that's kind of how seasons kind of shape up. They had their first road victory over Youngstown State for the first time since 2006. So not only did they get a road win this past weekend against Youngstown State, which gives them their second road victory of the year, it's their first one over Youngstown State in almost 18, 19 years. So it just goes to show you that that's a big thing to know, right? So they're coming off of probably a pretty big high. Will that play a factor into today's game? I don't know, right? So those are the things that I do. And then I've got like next matchup. So I typically put up to 3 more games for them here. So who they're playing next. I don't necessarily put in like the standings of each team or where they're at record wise. I have that another place. But at least Detroit Mercy is currently sitting right now 4th in the Horizon League. So that's a pretty big matchup for them. And kind of going from there. And then I scroll down here. I have I just started doing this before we got on the show. I do our comparisons. So I put in points per game, margin, which is the scoring margin that they average. Their average, both negative 3.5 is their average margin. That's why they're 2-7 and 6-12 overall, right? Field goal percentage is 38%. Free throw is 67. 3-point is 25%. And what I'll do is I'll go to the Rise League website and I'll actually find out where they rank in each category in the league. So, and then that's obviously a mark, right? If my guess is at 58.2, Golden Grizzlies are at 61.7. So my guess is without even knowing what the rank is, my guess is there's someone in the neighborhood of 9, 10, or 11 ranking wise in their scoring offense. And then we've got our rebounds, which is average total rebounds per game. They average 35.4. That's actually not a terrible number. Their rebounding is pretty good. I was looking at their statistics. If you look up here, and I'll actually color coordinate this, but this person's got 85 rebounds, 79, 62, 71, 62 here, 51. So you got some pretty good on the higher end of the rebounding. So the team does a pretty good job rebounding. I would be curious. We should probably do this right now. I'm curious where they rank in rebounding as a team. What do you think, man, with those numbers? What do you think, Nathan?
How many teams are in the Horizon League again?
11.
Probably 4th, 5th.
Wow. Let's change this. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. We'll come back here. Let's pull in the Horizon League current standings. I'm gonna pull it up here right now, and here we go. And sure as you said it, man, 4th or 5th.
Are they 4th? Nice.
Yeah.
Look at that. Hey, man. You win a lot of games if you're good on the boards. Just saying.
So but this is the mentality of again, you probably do things different than I do them. I mean, everyone is different in kind of how they prep. The one last thing that I wanted to show is and I'll bring it back to this is at the bottom of my chart, I put in their previous seasons, what they've done the last 4 seasons. I have their coaching information. Chandler McCabe, it's actually her first year at this new role So actually a first head coaching job at this level. So she's a first year coach, first year head coach. So she's got an interesting story. And then I'll go through down here and I'll put a whole bunch of stuff. I haven't started doing that yet, but I'll put a whole bunch of stuff in here. Storylines, things like that, players that might have impact. Like I actually have a spot here for players who are on the roster but have not done anything minute-wise or really had any points this season. So I'll put them here just in case something were to happen. They come in, at least I have their names on my roster. And that's kind of how I do things as far as my spotting board is concerned. We got a lot of comments coming in from my question about the personal side of things. And here's one of them. I've shared some things with my boss, but only as deeply as it is relevant to the situation. If I'm going to be out a couple hours a day, 1 or 2 times a week for a month, I'll give him the backstory. Jimmy goes, sometimes I just need to burn some PTO. Which is Peter goes, Jimmy, that sounds about right. But in my situation, I've learned to keep my mouth shut. Business is business and personal is personal. I only talk about work, weather, and sports, sadly. And I got burned once too many times spilling personal info. Peter, I can relate. It depends on the boss. It's true. I think it does. I think if your boss is approachable,
I think it depends on the boss and it depends on the field that you're in. If I have a relationship with my boss where it in the office, it's like it's strictly a working relationship. Like I'm not spending every day around him. I don't have a ton of connections with him through work. Like, you know what kind of boss I'm talking about. You know, the 9-to-5 boss where you might see him a couple of times a day, but you're not working all that closely with him. You might have your group or your cohort or you work with these individuals, but you're going to spend more time around clients and all these other people as opposed to your boss. So in that field or whatever other field you're talking about where you're not as necessarily in direct contact with your boss, yeah, don't go up to him and be like, hey, here's the worst news you've ever heard in your life. I'm just going to trauma dump on you and then walk away. Like that is not wise. What I will say though, it's different when you talk about what we do and you and me and all of our other talents. You're not just a boss in the sense of like you write out my schedule, you sign my paychecks, and then we don't really have a talking, close working relationship beyond that point. That's not true. You are my boss, but I talk to you every damn day, whether I want to or not, Monday through Friday on this, I'm kidding. But Monday through Friday on Inside the Game, I do that. I do broadcasts with you. Obviously, we're going to start getting into more of the sales realm, which I'm brand new to. But again, I'm working directly with you on that. Everything that I'm doing in this realm pretty much is with you or it's with one of our other talents. So in that degree, when you spend more time around a specific person, whether it be in the job field, whether it be something else, that work relationship, that strictly work relationship can develop into something else. Now, it doesn't mean you have to spend every waking moment around each other outside of the broadcast, or we even have to talk every day. Like, that's not my relationship with like Dan Hasty at the Whitecaps. Like, we'll go out once in a while and we'll do a postseason meal and we'll hang out and, we, watched a movie once in a while, but like, it's not as if I'm his best friend, but it's a little bit more intimate in the way that I am around him all the time, much in the way that I'm around you all the time. Now, not physically, digitally speaking, obviously through this medium,
but we've made it a habit. We've made it a habit with us specifically. And I know we kind of went backwards on this, but I saw seeing the comments coming in and I wanted to kind of get into that. But we stepped back and we believe that food is a very important component of a good, strong foundation of relationships. So you mentioned going out and having a meal, maybe a postseason with Dan. We tend to do that a lot when we were out doing games out in the field. We would be eating a lot. I mean, we bring food in. We're always trying to break bread.
Place by the studio, Arnie and Jake's.
Art and Jake's.
There we go.
Yeah, Art and Jake's.
The most American establishment I've ever been in. We got burgers and sports on the TV.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I want to dive back into this prep for a second, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk, and maybe you can give me And what we can do too is I think that there'll be an opportunity for you too as you are going, because I don't know if you have anything that you're prepping for today, but we can go through mine and maybe talk about what you do and kind of maybe in comparison. But I also do other things too. So I'm gonna just show this. This right here is just so you have if you'll have a reference point. This is Robert Morris's overall stats for the entire season. Okay. And then what I do underneath it is I have their conference stats. The highlighted means I've actually gone through and put those highlight stats into my spotting board. If you notice for Oakland, I haven't done that yet. I will go through and do that. These are right here. These are all their stats for the season as a team. And next to that is actually all of their actual game by game like results. And that's on both sides. Underneath, again, is the conference stuff. So if I ever want to go, okay, well, what's going on in conference for Maya? Normally she's shooting she's shooting 41% from the field overall. But if I look at her for this season, in conference, she's shooting 35%. Well, why is that? Well, in non-conference play, you might play easier opponents. You might have scored 25 more points than you normally do. So we'll look at those things and what that might look like, down the stretch. The other thing that I do, and I'm working on these right now, is every game I create different cards. And you might say, John, well, why would you just do? And to be fair, I have a shit ton of technology, so why wouldn't I just put this, on paper and print it off? Part of this is I've always been this person that when I write something down, I tend to remember it more by writing it than by typing it. It's more for me of a personal remembering things. Some people will type things up and create these flashy things, and I can do all of that because I had that experience, but I find that writing these things down is actually more beneficial for me. This here is the current Horizon League standings. So I'll go through, write those down with their record in conference and then their overall record. And then anything like right here on this far side here, I'll put on there that they've won 12 in a row, right? So Purdue Fort Wayne, who's currently 10-0 in the league, sitting atop the standings, has won 12 in a row, but they're 10-0 in conference play. So they're having a fantastic season. Green Bay, they've won 8 in a row. They're 8-1. You know what I mean? So that's why I do that. I actually do this every game, and you're going to go, why do you do this every game? I am not a basketball player. I'm not. And the reason why I do this is I need to constantly remind myself, especially if I haven't done a game in a couple weeks. I haven't done a basketball game since it's been actually 2 weeks now. Last basketball 2 weeks ago today. And I forget distances between like the baseline and the free throw, a free throw line between the free throw line and the 3-point land, right? So I need to remind myself. So every time I do a game, I will go back to this card and remember that it's 22 feet and 3/4 is what 3-point land is in women's basketball. It's 15 feet.
Why does that matter to you though?
Why? A couple of reasons. One is when you're talking about location on a court. Now, I'm not doing radio play-by-play, but I am doing play-by-play. And when you're talking about locating a player on the court, a lot of times you'll say, "Hey, top of the key, right, is where a three-pointer will be taken, right? Top of the key, left wing, left corner, right wing, right corner, right." You start to say these things a lot. Well, when they take a step back three, you might say, "Hey, I step back for 22-footer." You might say that. You might say, hey, instead of saying a free throw, taking a shot, a jumper from the free throw line, you might say a 15-footer, an 18-footer, right? You might just start to say those things as the game progresses. Because we don't want to be a person that says the same shit all the time, right? Like if you start talking about like the rim, which leads me to my next thing, is these are I call it today's terms. Okay, so what here is I will find different terms that I can use during the course of the game so I'm not redundant, right? So ball hits off the rim, right? I can say rim a bunch of times, but I can say iron, right? I can say a number of other things in regards to the rim. Someone is shooting the ball. I can say step back, I can say jumper, floater, hey, a transition 2. Well, what is a transition 2 or transition 3? What is that? Well, that means that they were obviously got the ball back. They transitioned down the court took a 3, I can say transition 3, then the other just saying 3. Puts it up and in. That's another way of defining a shot. Chances, right? How many chances did this person take to put the ball up and in? One time, first chance, second chance, third chance. Are there freaking, second chance points? Pull up. There's different terms that we can use to describe a moment when it's happening. So I'll do that for like in and out of play. I'll do it for the court. So identifying factors for the court, top of the key, beyond the arc, corner, wing, free throw, 15-footer. I'll actually, instead of saying 15 feet, I'll actually put in there, just mention foot, feet. You go end to end, coast to coast, right? Things like that. So I'm building my terminology for the game, and this will actually happen up until tip-off. So I will go through this process leading up until the moment the game tips off. And I do that because a lot of times I'll be just going down the road. I'll be, driving to the game. I'll be at the facility, seeing something. I hear something, and it rings a bell, and I write it down. So for me, this is a constant thing that's happening. And that's really the majority of my prep. I will watch our sideline reporter. Her name is Patty Cesarini. So she'll interview both coaches before the game on video, ask them about the matchup. I used to contact these coaches ahead of the games. But because of timing, I don't have that ability to do that as much. So now I rely heavily on Patty when she interviews the coaches, to just give us these nuggets of information. And I'll review those, and that will help me in regards to any type of coaching information. And then, yeah, so that's kind of how I prepare in a nutshell.
So I'm curious if you can bring that. Do you have your spotting board? If you could bring it back up. Do you have your Oakland one? Because I guess this question would be a lot easier with your Oakland team, maybe as opposed to the other side. But I could ask it for the other side too. So looking at this here, is there any way of zooming in on the numbers and the names on the left side? We're kind of taking it. There we go. So I know you got where they're from there at the bottom, right? So looks like we got Miami, Florida, Dayton, Minnesota. Do you have a section anywhere in this game notes? Now, I don't know how much of a deep dive you do on bios, but I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Tell me one interesting fact about a player on Oakland. Something that no one would know if they used Google to look up stats or any of this other information.
No one would know if they didn't look up stats. And is it a specific player, or does it matter what player we're talking about?
It doesn't matter what player, but just a personal anecdote about one of the players that you're covering.
Yeah, so like, for example, number 0, Naz Damon. She's from Miami, Florida, and she was born in 2005. So I know that. Now, that might be an interesting fact, but I also know she played AAU basketball in Texas. She was a 2-time state champion as well. So those are things that I know just based off of doing this the last couple of years. And she's a runner-up actually twice too. So she's been successful wherever she's been. Is that interesting enough? Do I need to go any further than that?
No, I was just curious because when I'm just trying to, I guess, mentally kind of prepare this to what my preparation looks like, so I can show you a little bit of what I do on my screen. And I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I do it a little bit different than I think a lot of broadcasters do. And that's not me trying to be, quirky or unique. That is just me just trying to find what is the easiest way for me to tell the story of this game without having necessarily to follow, I guess, kind of the format that you did. Not saying that you did it wrong, but a lot of those stats are all online. So as long as in my mind, if I have the right tabs open in front of me, I can find all that information without having to take all that extra time to get it down. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I don't do boards is because of all the different teams that I cover throughout the course of the season. So we're kind of taking a look at what I have here, but I have so many different teams that I cover, and I don't necessarily follow one or two throughout the course of the year. So I'll break it down in a way that's understandable for me. Now, anything extra that I want to get, again, are pulled up on tabs in front of me. But this is a lot of the important stuff that I want to cover, right? So this is kind of a look at my men's game notes. Now, this isn't completed yet. I'm still working on kind of touching up what this is going to look like because it's an upcoming game. But on top here, we got overall conference and standing, right? So immediately that's the important juicy stuff right on top, right? So they're in third. They're behind Lawrence Tech and Indiana Tech. I got coach. I got obviously the hyperlink, so you can follow that if you want more information. And then we get into news and notes. And this is where I kind of start to craft the game itself, right? So we talk about last time out winning. I'm going to give relevant stats as to what exactly led to that win or loss. Also have some other team stuff. Connor Dykema, solid outing, double-double, 12 points, 10 boards, one of the biggest reasons why they won that game. All of the reason what brought us to this point, the last time out, is right there. We got last season, which I think is relevant. And then down here, we got bitten by the injury bug. And again, we talked about not mentioning the specific injuries, but the importance of mentioning this in one way or the other because it is relevant to the story. So that's something that I've worked down in there. The other thing that I have right here, and it's mostly because we don't have, as you talked about, JT, we don't have the time throughout the course of the season to be able to talk to coaches specifically. We don't. I mean, it would be ultimately it would be great if I could set up a pregame conversation with every coach for every game that I do. But I just simply can't. That's just not a reality of where I am, especially with having my hands.
But I think it's important, though, to acknowledge that if you were doing this, if this was like, if you were like working for Fox or working for like Big Ten Network, you have one game a week or two games and you're doing this as part of that process. I think it's important we say that because it's true.
Yes. Yes. And even for the West Michigan White, the minor league team, I mean, we're talking to the managers, coaches all the time because we're covering that team all summer long. And you're right. And if you do games nationally, that changes things. But down here, we have our conversation with coach. So this was a pregame conversation, and this is kind of covering everything around the team, what we should expect to see. So we have a new look offense. It resembles more of a Princeton concept, right? Where you're constantly moving the ball. It's almost as if the ball just doesn't touch the ground. So for people who are watching the game, who are seeing the game, and let's just say they're noticing, they're moving a little bit quicker, more pace, more space. They're shooting from three a little bit more. Well, this is why. I had a conversation with coach, and he talked to me about, obviously, the new strategies. I'm talking about defense leads to offense, traditional, their 32 offense that they used to run that they're going to get into. And then down here is where I kind of, and again, this isn't done yet. I got to add numbers. I got to add some other stuff. So don't, take this completely. This is where I kind of abbreviate what you have in front of you. And again, JT, there's no one size fits all with any of this stuff. So anybody out there that's looking at this going, this is wrong, this is right, you're wrong, because there's no one way of doing all this. As long as I have the information in front of me that I need and the important stuff, there's multiple ways of going about this. But here's where I try to abbreviate spotting boards, because again, I would love to make professional spotting boards for every sport I do. It's not possible. But here's where I try to abbreviate this. So first of all, you have key players. Now, these are stat leaders. These are guys who lead the team in certain stats, right? Blake Stewart, one of the best field goal percentages in the conference, best on the team. Luke Rollinson, point leader. Caden Bird, one of the best three-point shooters in the league. Toby Wolcott, kind of a do-it-all guy. Ton of takeaways, ton of blocks, ton of assists. Connor Dykema, one of the best rim protectors, right? That is our core group. And so if anybody else outside of that wants to step up and make an impact, well, then I have all of their stats right in front of me and the tabs pulled up that I need. So those are quick references in my mind, but this is the meat and potatoes of what we're looking at. And then down here we have team keys. So obviously these are the stats that have led to where we are right now.
Are you working most of your games by yourself though?
No, so I do it. I have a number two with me for some of them. It's not all of them. It's kind of a rotating door depending on who's available for what situations.
Sure. Percentage-wise, though, if you had to go off of it, how many games are you solo versus non-solo?
I'd have to say for basketball season, probably 5 or 6 games solo.
So most of your games are going to be with somebody else?
Yes.
Okay. And the other sports that you do, like soccer, baseball, whatever else you might do, are you typically solo for those?
Not for baseball. I have a number 2 for baseball. I mean,
Not,
unless
I'm
I'm on the
talking
road.
about, yeah, I'm talking about like if you're, I'm talking about non-Whitecap stuff.
Oh, majority of the time, yes, I'm solo. I
Okay,
would
guys. I
say
mean, because most college
more
environments,
than
the only time that we bring in a color or an analyst role is traditionally basketball. We volleyball, they did it for the first time this year, but typically I was on my own for volleyball. So I would create a whole bunch of storylines that would allow me to fill space. Um, the reality, and you know this, the reality when it comes to basketball, and I'm not going to talk about men's basketball. For women's basketball, you've got 4 quarters, 10 minutes in length, a lot's going on. You can't spit a lot of information out. And I have a number 2 next to me. So when you have a number 2,
I think you
their
can.
job is to, huh?
I think you can. And I don't mean to cut you off,
No,
but conversation is a really key part, especially on TV, because you don't have to deal with locators. I get it. It moves fast. But anyways, what were you
well,
going to say?
my point though is that I don't spend as much time on the storylines for basketball as I do other sports because I do have someone sitting next to me, and that's really their job. Their job
Yeah,
is
that is.
to,
Yep.
and that's their job. So, for me, my job is that when something is happening, I have a quick reference, and I we are constantly getting updated
Right.
stats throughout any given game too,
Right.
right? So I
But
might say that this person's a 41%, from the field,
right.
throughout the season, but today they're shooting
Right.
35%. So we use those stats all the time. I've gone back and forth where I've put no stats on my board, and I've put in key things, hey, like their career high game and different facts about a player. I've found that what I do for my games, and which we didn't share our screen, like kind of like what I would have on my screen. So on my laptop in front of me, I will have 4 tabs that are open. I will have one for each team, their roster page. So I can go onto the roster and click on a player quickly. And if I need information about like something related to them, I can find it further than what was on my spotting board. I also have the Horizon League open for anything related to the Horizon League that would be beneficial to me in that. And then, of course, I have my live stats. So wherever the stats are happening,
right.
from the arena, they are right in front of me. So I can keep track of, because
Right.
the biggest thing for me is scoring, right? So scoring is a big thing from a play-by-play standpoint. And I say scoring, it's not just, okay, I scored a bucket, but it's the fact that this, Robert Morris has gone on an 8-0 run of the last 2 minutes and 19 seconds. And knowing that that's happening. It's my
Right.
job to understand that there's of the last 4 minutes and 16 seconds, Oakland hasn't scored, and they've missed 8 of their last. They've missed 8 field goals in that time
Right.
span and turned it over
Right.
3. Like it's
That
my
is
job to
important.
know those things. So
It
so
is.
that's kind of how I look at it, and I'm not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the way you do things is fantastic. I mean, I used to come from a place where I would put more information on a spotting board, and I found that took too much time. I've come from a
Yeah.
place where sometimes I just print off both rosters, so I have those in front of me. So I've done that as well in situations too. So no, I agree with you. I agree that
Yeah.
the one thing that I struggle with when it comes to basketball, and I'll be the first one to say this to anybody, is I do struggle in the conversation component with my analyst. Where we're just dialoguing in between.
That's
You
and
know what I
that's
mean?
what I
That's
was.
that's
Yeah.
the one area because the thing is that
Yeah.
after a play happens, I'm looking at from the standpoint of as someone who's visually watching this game. And again, for those of you who are not understanding the concept of what we're trying to explain, the things that go on, right? In my environment, in my ears, so I'm wearing a headset, I have the audio of the person talking next to me. And I also have the audio of my director who's back in his room directing the show. Now, he's not always in my ear, but I'm listening for him as well. You throw in the crowd noise, you throw in what's happening in front of you. There are a lot of distractions that can be happening. So for me, and to be fair, and you probably, I don't know if you experience this a lot either. Do you deal with that at Cornerstone? Do you deal with that with a lot of the directors? And now I know probably at the Whitecaps you do all the time, but do you deal with someone in your ear all the time telling you, hey, by the way, get ready, here comes a highlight, or here comes this. Are you getting that in your ear?
Not at CU. No.
So, but you get that at the Whitecaps, right? You get someone in your ear saying, hey, guys, we got to go to break 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you wait, right? So those things are happening. And if you ever think about this from the standpoint, if you watch a professional football game, while Joe Buck is talking or Tom Brady or anyone's talking, inside of Joe Buck's headset, someone is saying, guys, we're going to break in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and they're counting down. And it is your job as the play-by-play person to, while you're listening to that countdown, to finish your thought and end it at 0. And imagine trying to do that for the first time and nail it. And then, fast forward to, 1,000 times later, that's what it's like. But we deal with that. And I'll be the first one to tell you that it is a struggle for me. I struggle very much in that environment. And because there's so much happening. And when you have your producer in your ear and you have the person next to you talking and you're trying to focus on the court in front of you, it could be a lot. And that's where, like, I do believe that like you get to the higher levels, you have someone who's next to you who's spotting players, right? Spotting players. The other part of this too, which I struggle with, is in that first quarter, it takes you about a quarter to recognize the other team. I'm not saying that I don't recognize the players, but to be fair, most of these teams don't warm up in their original jersey numbers. So even though you have a picture of them, their picture doesn't always tell the tale of who they are. So you can't always identify the player while they're warming up. So you don't necessarily know that number 0 is Maya Murray and she's out there warming up, because there's 5 other players who are 5'6" who meet her kind of description and have similar hairstyles. So you can't find her while she's warming up. So it takes me 3 or 4 minutes of the first quarter to actually figure out who the hell is who from the other team. And then once you do that, then they start subbing. So now you're getting a player who just subbed in. And you're trying to figure out who that player is. So these are all excuses. And you're like, John, man, that's a lot. But to be fair, that is our world. We live in that world where, you are in soccer at the high school level, you get players coming in and out all the time. But you get to the UPSL, the amateur league, we only get 7 subs. You deal with the same players for like 90% of the game. And then there's like these 10%ers that come in. But in basketball, people are subbing on and off all the time. So you have to manage that. You have to manage all aspects of that. And then, and Nathan, I'm not sure if you feel this way too. We actually surpassed our time. I do apologize. But the question I have for you is, before we end this show, is there's a player on your roster, on your spotting board or whatever, and they're like, man, I don't ever want to say that player's name ever. Please don't put them on the court. Please don't put them on the court. Do not put that person on the court, damn it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And then sure as crap, that person shows up and you're just like,
yep,
that's Jane. You're like, I'm not going to say that last name.
Been there.
You got to finish your thought, but I got to,
Nope, I've been there, but hey, I refuse to say nicknames or first names. I'm going to say last names. Come hell or high water, I'm saying last names because that's the professional way to do it. So we got to figure it out, man. It's just a part of the job.
That it is. That'll be a wrap on episode number 14. Steve Besk gets in the conversation here. Says Mr. 100. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate it nonetheless. But either way, excited to have people along for the ride. Remember, subscribe, like, share, follow us on all the different platforms. We'll be back at this again here tomorrow. No, we will not be back tomorrow. I apologize. No show tomorrow. There'll be no show. I'll be in Oklahoma. And so, yeah. So, but either way, I appreciate you stopping by. And subscribe, listen to us, all the above. I'm Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wang. We'll be watching Inside the Game right here on the National Soccer Network.